HiFiman Edition XX, the large planar with a lot of competition. Let's check it out. So let's start off with the build. This thing has the classic HiFiman headband before they were using suspension straps. In fact, one of my first headphones I ever had a similar headband to this. It was the original HiFiman HE400, not to be confused with the 400i and 400s. I hated the headband on that one, and I kinda don't like the headband on this one, but I understand that to make this headphone fit into its price point, some areas had to be sacrificed, that suspension strap probably being one of them. So this doesn't feature the nicer suspension straps you'll find on things like Ananda or on the 400i, things like that. And instead we're left with this. The adjustment mechanism on the side isn't terrible. It doesn't hold very well. There are times where I'll put it on my head and it does slide up or down as it pleases. And there are some times where just like that, it got a little bit harder to move. But I imagine just like the original ones, it'll wear down some, but it'll probably not break. It'll probably just be a little bit difficult over time for it to hold its shape. On the subject of this headband, it does have a little bit more padding, I feel like, than the old HiFiman headbands, but this could really use a pilot pad or something like that if you really want to take full advantage of it. Or there are aftermarket suspension straps you can throw on the old school HiFiman headbands that can help alleviate this issue, so that's not a deal breaker. Going down from there, we have these metal yokes on the sides and plastic grills over the top of the drivers. This will help protect things from getting in there, but one of mine showed up broken right here, so that kind of sucks, but that's how it goes. I'm sure that if I contacted Mass Drop, they would have sent me another one, but it's no biggie. It's not affecting the sound, it seems, so I decided to just review them as they are. The pads are very large and comfortable. I'm very happy they use these giant pads like they did on several of their other models. The hybrid pad is very, very good. I'm definitely a big fan of it. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the method that they use to attach and detach it, because these clips, God, I feel like I'm gonna break it every time I detach the pad. It doesn't really offer any way to mount on third-party pads, so if you want to use a different pad, you're pretty much out of luck unless somebody 3D prints an adapter of some kind, or you can find an adapter online. Which with my investigation, I didn't see one, but I didn't look that hard for it, because I'm pretty happy with the stock pads if I can get them back on. But like all pads, they will wear down and need to be replaced eventually, and at least they're not too difficult to change. I actually find it's a little bit more difficult to change Bayer pads at times, but at least Bayers will let you swap on different pads. So these do also swivel and tilt in both directions, and moving farther down, you'll notice on the bottom we have dual 3.5mm entry. These are very easy to balance, but this is where the single worst part of the build comes in, and that's the cable. The cable is so bad that I threw it away, and now I'm using a Periapt cable. I'm not gonna make any claims about sound or anything like that, but the stock cable was so poorly built. It was constantly tangled. It did not want to unravel properly. It had a terrible memory to where you'd unravel it and it would stay curled up. Just everything about the stock cable was terrible. So if you care about the build of your cables at all whatsoever, and you also care about not having a cable that's horrifically tangled all the time, Periapt makes pretty decent cables, so they're worth checking out. So with that said, let's talk about sound and frequency response. Now I have a graph here on my phone. I'm gonna pull that up real quick because I just posted it in the patron chat, which by the way, if you want access to that, patron chat on Telegram will be linked in the video description on the Patreon. So this thing extends very, very deep and has a pretty flat frequency response up until around 800 hertz. And then it starts to dip down. This reaches its lowest point at both 2 kilohertz and again at around 6 kilohertz, with a couple areas where it starts to rise back up at 5 and 8 kilohertz. Now, these two areas where it rises back up are certainly audible, but for the most part, it sounds like a headphone that is very linear in the low mid-range and bass, not bloomy, not bloated at all, just very flat low end and recessed dark high end and upper mid-range, which leaves this headphone with a very relaxed sound. Now, unfortunately, it still somehow manages to come across with some sibilance at times, which I was actually surprised by based off this headphone's overall frequency response. And with that, there was another downside. I did measure a roughly 1.5 decibel, 2 decibel channel imbalance between each ear, which all things considered, it's not that bad, 1.5 decibel to 2 decibel channel imbalance, but it's just enough that it can be annoying at times. And just to make sure, I did test the measurement rig again and my amp and DAC that I was using with a number of other headphones and could not get any channel imbalance at all whatsoever. So maybe it's just this one unit, might be others, but that's always a possibility, and that kind of sucks when it does happen. Now this can be corrected, but I just prefer that it not have to be, because I like to plug and play different headphones all the time and I don't have to go back in software to adjust my balance. So if you don't have a measurement rig like mine and you want to check channel imbalance, what you can actually do is put your headphones on and play some music that is in mono, and just a mono channel. And if your image is leaning to one side or the other, you probably have a little bit of a channel imbalance. If the channel imbalance is drastic, this music will lean far to one side or the other, but in mono, you should hear everything exactly the same across the board and have a strong center image. Speaking of center image, this one's center image is a little bit weak. I'd say that imaging works very well far out to the sides, and then I'd say around 2 o'clock inwards, everything is just kind of hazy. And hazy is another word I would use to describe the upper mid-range and highs on this headphone. It is not exactly detailed when compared to its competition at a similar price range, and I don't put that at Massdrop to blame at all, because Massdrop also put out the ESP95X, which is a detail king at its price point. But also remember, at this price point, we are competing with things like the DT1990, which, that is a very, very intense headphone to go up against. And the 660S. So does this have any cards on the table that can compete with the DT1990, the ESP95X, and the HD660S? Well, actually, yes. This does Soundstage in a very interesting way. Now, it's probably because of the large pads and these exceptionally large drivers and a bit of a recess in the upper mid-range and treble, but this has an extremely out-of-your-head sound, which is actually probably aided by the slightly hazy center channel. Soundstage on this is not as wide as something crazy like the HD800, but it is certainly an out-of-your-head experience. It sounds like the music is coming from right about out here on either side and surrounds me. There are times where vocal intimacy can come farther in. I do get some of the classic Sennheiser vocals that people were used to on the HD600, 650, 58X, and 660S, though not quite as clear in the mid-range and not nearly as present. I do get a little bit of that staging at times for just vocals when certain songs present themselves. But for the most part, things go out pretty wide, and that's an interesting experience. And mixing that with the dark nature and slightly less resolving sound of this headphone, it actually makes for a very promising, relaxed headphone. If you can deal with the headband, that is. Now, this is not something for critical listening. I wouldn't say this is for someone who's looking for an analytical sound and all the detail in the world, because you're not going to get it, but it is a very good headphone for someone who just wants a wide and relaxed experience. In fact, that's most of what I found myself using it for. When I did listen to this headphone, when I could put up with the comfort, I easily found myself getting lost in many albums back to back while working on my computer. And it was a pleasant experience. I didn't feel the need to sit and listen to every single detail, but instead I found myself getting lost in the music and letting albums just play all the way through to completion one by one, and for that, I think this was a great experience. So it really comes down to what you're looking for. There may be some build issues, but as I said, I'm sure that if you've got a defective unit, I imagine Massdrop would probably take care of you. I've had reasonably good experiences with them in the past in relation to this, as several other people have as well, which, by the way, that's not my personal endorsement of Massdrop. I'm just speaking off of what I've experienced. But with the quality of some of the other things they've put out, I think that they know what they're doing. And I do have some other Massdrop reviews on the way, like the Empire Ears Zeus. So if you want to see that, you should definitely stick around and subscribe, because those things are pretty crazy. So in conclusion, we have a dark headphone with a bit of a hazy center image, not super resolving, but very relaxed, wide sound. A bit of comfort issue on the top, and like I said, mine had a bit of a channel imbalance, but the large pads definitely make up for the comfort on the top. Great headphone for someone who wants a very relaxed sound, and not a great headphone for someone who's into critical listening. But it definitely has earned its place in its price range alongside the 1990, the ESP95X, and the HD660S, and is a viable alternative to all of those if you're looking for a different sound. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you liked this video, please leave a like down below and a comment. Let me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to join the discussion about these headphones, you can at forum.hifiguides.com. And don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until the next one, guys. Peace.